Mom, is the sun exploding? Both parents glanced at each other, then Court Tolson tightly answered, Yes, Drew, it is. They reached the lake in less than 5 minutes. By the time they reached the parking lot, they could see the lake bed several hundred yards in the distance, glimmering like a fiery blanket. Not long ago, the water had been up to the pier, lapping against the pylons which supported the short boardwalk. Everyone out, run to the water, hurry! Court Tolson shouted to his family. David, help me with that canoe over there. Drew started a protest when his mother grabbed his hand and made him go with her. Underneath the relentless rays, they could feel their skin burning with each passing second. When they reached the water, his mother didn't stop and went splashing into the warm water, pulling Drew along with her. Not far behind them, Drew's father and older brother followed, carrying the long wooden canoe above their heads. Go deeper, Court called out. Go as far out as you can. Try to make it to the middle of the lake. Struggling in the depths, Drew threw his arms around his mother's neck as she blindly felt her way along the bottom of the lake. Moments later, Court and David joined them, swimming toward them while keeping the canoe upside down overhead. Drew stared in surprise as his mother took one end and his father took the other, keeping him and David in the middle. David was taller than he was, but his brother still had to support himself on their father's shoulders to keep his head above the surface. There they struggled to remain afloat in the warming water while the sun beat down on the overturned canoe. Don't touch anything made of metal, Court ordered. If you have to grab something, make sure it's wooden. At first, Drew wondered why there was a high-pitched hissing sound coming from all around them. Peering through the narrow space between the side of the canoe and the surface, he could see huge columns of smoke rising from the banks. That's not smoke, Drew, it's steam. Look closer, you'll see the water's boiling where it's the most shallow. His father was right. Even where they were, the water was growing noticeably warmer. As he watched in fascination, he could swear he could see the water level in the lake slowly falling as the scorching sun drank. There was a huge oblong rock in the shape of an airplane at the water's edge. Right now, most of it remained submerged except for the left wing, which sat like a white bleached bone. What if the water gets too hot? Tina asked her husband. She didn't dare speak of them possibly boiling to death in front of the children, although the prospect was all too real. Mitch says the sun probably won't stay hot long enough to get the whole body to that point. Court kept urging them to go further and further into the deepest part of the lake. If it weren't for the life vests, Drew would have given out long ago. They frequently had to throw water on their faces or duck beneath the surface in order to find some small measure of relief. How long do you think this will last? Tina asked her husband at one point. Her arms ached from holding the canoe, and underneath the interior the air was quickly becoming humid and steamy. Court shook his head. I don't know, honey, but Mitch seemed to think no more than an hour or two. An hour or two? Her voice hitched with unshed tears. Her husband tried to soothe her. Have faith, honey, he spoke in a calm voice, hoping their sons wouldn't start crying either. Remember, if it weren't for Mitch, we wouldn't have known what to look for, or be prepared for it, and know what to do when it came. Hearing his father speak of Joe's father sent a spasm of sheer panic through 11-year-old Drew. Dad? What, son? There's no lake where Joe is. How is she going to live? Already he could feel the tears stinging his eyes, and he knew that when his older brother saw him crying, he would get ribbed mercilessly for being a weak baby. But he didn't care. Thinking about Joe facing this same terror was almost too much for him to stomach. Thankfully, his father knew just what to say to give him some measure of assurance. His eyes riveted onto the airplane-shaped rock across the lake. The water was down past the tail and body and was sliding over the lower right wing. Before too long, the entire rock would be above lake level. Drew, Joe's probably safer than we are right now. After all, her father knows more about the sun and the solar system than most people on Earth. He gave the little man a small smile. Don't worry about her, son. She'll make it through this just fine, just as we will. Drew didn't respond. No matter how hopeful his father sounded, it wouldn't stop him from worrying. In fact, he never stopped worrying for the next 17 years.